Aloha and welcome to the webinar. We'll be starting in just a minute. If you would like to let us know where you're joining from today, please go ahead and enter that into the chat. You can also check out the native lands that correspond to your location via the link that's posted there as well. Wow, Pennsylvania. Australia, Panama, Belgium. Awesome. We're just going to wait one more minute while everybody gets a chance to put where they're from if they'd like, and then we'll kick it off. Wow, it's great to see so many people joining us today from all around the world, even Brazil. That's awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. My name is Dr. Shannon Barber-Meyer, and I am the Senior Research Manager at Pacific Whale Foundation. I'm very happy to be sharing with you about our conservation impacting research on whales and dolphins that we conduct throughout the Pacific. I'll begin the webinar with an introduction to our overall research program, and then I'll turn it over to our three experts for their presentations today. Then I'll join you again at the end with some closing remarks. Please type your questions into the chat throughout the presentations, and we'll answer them after the presentations have concluded. So the Q&A is disabled. Just use the chat. Ooh, Ohio, San Diego, Ecuador. Hi, May. Awesome. So many people joining us. I'm sure you're as excited as I am. So let's dive right in. Our research at PWF is primarily focused on 5 major threats to whales and dolphins that you can see here, including vessel collisions, bycatch, climate change, unsustainable tourism, and marine plastic pollution. Additionally, some populations are so understudied that we don't even have the most basic information necessary to inform conservation. So we also conduct research aimed at filling those critical knowledge gaps. Our expert speakers for today's webinar are Dr. Barry McGovern, who's our research associate and has been leading the PWF Australia team in Hervey Bay since 2021. Dr. Cristina Castro is our Ecuador programs director, and she's been working to conserve whales in and around Machalilla National Park since 2001. And Jens Curry is our chief scientist and director of the research department and has been conducting whale and dolphin research in Hawaii since 2013. All of our research is aimed towards furthering our mission written here at the bottom of this slide: protecting the ocean through science and advocacy and inspiring environmental stewardship. Before we hear from our presenters, I will share some brief research examples from the regions where we study whales and dolphins. In Australia, we're using drone imagery to analyze scarring in humpback whales, looking for evidence of threats such as vessel collisions and rope entanglements. Our findings will inform management strategies that are aimed at reducing such human-caused injuries and promoting a safer marine environment. We're also conducting surveys to determine baseline information on the vulnerable Australian humpback dolphin. I did not say humpback whale. Did you hear me say humpback dolphin? That's right. So you'll hear more about this from Barry shortly. In Ecuador, our team studies a variety of whales and dolphins. On the left are images of Brutus whales. Our team collects photo ID and biopsy samples to aid in determining the specific population of Brutus whales that frequent the coast of Ecuador. You can also see in the photos there one that highlights the potential threat of bycatch. Our team also conducts long-term research on humpback whales. The map on the right depicts the migratory destinations of humpback whales that have been identified in Ecuador. Christina will be sharing much more about this important research following Barry's presentation. Chile is home to a critically endangered population of southern right whales, with just an estimated 50 mature animals remaining in the entire population. Unfortunately, during 2023, 2 calf deaths were recorded by our team, both having signs of fishery and/or vessel interactions. Our team is studying the genetics and toxins in these whales to learn more about this rare population and the threats it is facing. We're also studying the newly identified Chilean blue whales' distribution, habitat use, and abundance to help inform conservation strategies. Sadly, such strategies are in dire need as Chile's oceanic coast is facing unprecedented large-scale industrial aquaculture that has resulted in habitat degradation, ocean pollution, increased vessel traffic, and other impacts to whales. And here are a few of the projects that our team is working on in Hawaii. I'm leading a statewide abundance estimate of humpback whales using over 2 decades of data from over 20 collaborators. Other research suggests that humpback whales in Hawaii suffered a decline following recent climate anomalies in the Pacific Northwest where they feed. You might have heard of this anomaly referred to as the blob. Our results will fill the important information gap of abundance estimates that decision makers need to manage these whales given the increasing threats due to climate change. Our team is also conducting 40 days of field surveys in cooperation with NOAA and the Marine Mammal Research Program to collect abundance and distribution data on spinner dolphins. These dolphins remain at risk from unsustainable tourism when they are disturbed during their daytime resting. We're also using cutting-edge technology to study the bioenergetics of false killer whales. You'll hear more about this exciting research from Jens later in the program. And now for our first regional presentation, I'll turn it over to Barry.
Thanks, Shannon. I'll just share my screen. How does that look?
Perfect.
Good. Okay, great. Well, thanks for that introduction, and thanks everyone for tuning in. As Shannon said, my name is Barry McGovern, and I lead the research team here in Hervey Bay in Australia. Now, today I'm going to talk to you about Australian humpback dolphins in Hervey Bay, investigating the conservation challenges of a threatened species. Before I do that, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands where we work and live here, and pay my respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. Okay. So Hervey Bay is situated on the east coast of Australia at the southeast tip of the state of Queensland. Now it's a large bay, approximately 4,000 square kilometers or 1,500 square miles. And it's part of the Great Sandy Marine Park. It's bordered on the east by this heritage listed sand island Gari, formerly known as Fraser Island, and at the south by the Great Sandy Straits. Now, at the south of the bay, the town of Hervey Bay is also situated. But for this talk, when I refer to Hervey Bay, I mean the Bay Area. It's a very important area for humpback whales. It's a known resting area for migrating whales, with up to a third of the population estimated to enter the bay between July and October. And this has led to the establishment of a very successful whale watching industry. But it's not just critical habitat for the humpback whales, it's also habitat for the at-risk Australian humpback dolphin, which is the focus of my talk. Australian humpback dolphins were only recognized as a distinct species in 2014, Susa sulensis. They're found in tropical and subtropical waters of northern Australia and southern New Guinea, and generally found in shallow coastal areas in waters less than 20 meters or less than 65 foot. There's currently no range-wide estimate of the population. However, there are several discrete population estimates from locations around Australia. And these have shown that on average, local populations are pretty small, between 50 and 90 individuals, but typically less than 150 individuals. These local populations are also geographically isolated, and so there's very limited genetic flow between them. And these factors make them highly susceptible to anthropogenic threats. Habitat degradation and loss is a key issue. This map here is from the IUCN and just highlights the degree of industrial activity that overlaps with the range of the Australian humpback dolphins. Commercial ports in blue are found throughout the range, with many currently expanding, those in red. There's also several large-scale mining operations in close proximity to the humpback dolphin range. As with most whales and dolphins, bycatch is also a major issue for the Australian humpback dolphin. Gill netting occurs throughout its range, and in some parts of Australia, shark nets from the government shark control program are also a cause of bycatch. Because of all these issues combined, the IUCN Red List of Threatened Species has Australian humpback dolphins listed as vulnerable to extinction, and the Queensland government has them on their threatened species list. In Harvey Bay, there's very little published information on humpback dolphins. There's currently no abundance estimate and information on the distribution in the Bay Area. In 2011, a study was carried out in the Great Sandy Straits south of the Bay, and this found that there was approximately 100 individuals split into two distinct communities at the north and south end. But there's no information for the Harvey Bay area, so there is an urgent need to determine the population size and the distribution for humpback dolphins in Harvey Bay, and also document what threats may be present in the area. So Harvey Bay is a very popular area with tourists, and it attracts a lot of recreational fishers and boaters. There's also a small commercial fishing industry in the area, and as I mentioned before, there's also a whale watching industry. And so vessel and fishing interactions are a potential threat to humpback dolphins in the area. This photo here is not of a humpback dolphin, but of a bottlenose dolphin in Harvey Bay, and it just shows that it had a recent interaction with a vessel. And that just demonstrates one of the potential issues for humpback dolphins in the area. And then, of course, climate change and its impacts on the environment are also a potential issue for humpback dolphins. An increase in the number and intensity of flooding and fire events, which has happened in Queensland over the last few years, can have major impacts on the environment, including increase in pollution, which may alter prey availability and ultimately degrading the habitat. And this all can impact the humpback dolphin at the population level. As I mentioned, Harvey Bay is a large area, so to establish the baseline information, things like the population size, distribution, and habitat use, the first step was to systematically survey the area. So to do this, between late 2022 and early 2024, we used line transect surveys to detect the dolphins in the area. This survey was designed to cover the whole area, and this is just represented by the dotted zigzag lines. These are our vessel tracks. And this allows us to estimate the abundance and map the distribution of the animals. Over 11 surveys, we covered approximately 3,400 kilometers or 2,100 miles of survey effort, but we had a relatively low detection rate, only encountering 15 sightings of humpback dolphins on those survey tracks, seen here in the map by the red dots. Group size ranged from 2 to 15 individuals with an average of 5, and calves were present in just over 40% of these. Sightings mostly occurred in shallow areas close to shore at an average depth of about 6 meters. However, this low detection rate unfortunately means that we couldn't estimate the population size from these surveys. It may also allude to the fact that the population is quite small. However, we can still determine the distribution of humpback dolphins in the area by supplementing this data set. So if we include additional sightings from our other surveys for humpback whales, for example, or for during we're transiting to and from these survey lines, we can increase the number of animals we can use to determine their distribution. Once we can identify the distribution and key habitats for the Australian humpback dolphins, we can then use this information to help guide our research program in 2025 and beyond. We'll then switch tack to a different survey method and focus more on increasing our photographic identification efforts to allow us to establish photo ID catalogues of the individuals in the bay. This survey method is another way to determine the population size and allows us to track the life history of individuals over time. You'll hear a little bit more about this survey method from Christina's talk. But it's the outcomes of that initial systematic line transect survey that allows us to know where to focus our survey efforts and our resources to make sure we maximize our data collection. The next step then will be to assess the degree of threats that humpback dolphins face in Hervey Bay. We currently use drone technology to assess the health of humpback whales in Australia, where we fly the drone above the whales to measure their body condition. And we can use these same methods to assess the body condition of humpback dolphins. You'll hear a bit more about these methods from Jens's talk later. We also use photos and drone images to assess scars related to human activity, in particular fishing and vessel interactions. And so we can do that also with the Australian humpback dolphins. And finally, we'll consider the impact of natural predation in the bay. There's a very healthy population of large sharks in Hervey Bay, and we do see evidence of attacks on dolphins, such as this individual here with a fresh shark bite. All this information then will allow us to identify the cumulative threats that humpback dolphins face in the bay. Ultimately, we want to take this scientifically backed information and use it to support conservation measures for humpback dolphins in Hervey Bay. For example, the Great Sandy Marine Park recently rezoned the park where they create protection areas for sensitive species and habitats. But unfortunately, there were no zones designated for Australian humpback dolphins, and that's simply because of the lack of information available. We aim to provide this previously unavailable data to consider humpback dolphins in future rezonings of the area. And finally, given the vulnerable status of humpback dolphins, it's important to establish continuous long-term monitoring to highlight any changes in patterns related to anthropogenic threats in the future and to ensure that the population remains at a favorable conservation status. With that, I'd just like to thank you very much for listening and thank a number of people and organizations that have helped us throughout our years of research. And I'll hand it over to Christina. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Barry. Amazing presentation. I'd like to share my screen now. Okay. It's okay?
Looks great.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. My name is Cristina Castro, an Ecuadorian biologist. And I have dedicated the past 27 years to studying whales and dolphins in my country. Today, I would like to share with you one of the most important projects we have been working on, the monitoring of humpback whales. Our office and research center are located in Puerto Lopez in the province of Manabí. The project focuses on monitoring the central southern region of Ecuador, but we also collect opportunistic data from other areas throughout the country. We conduct monitoring in 2 provinces and 6 protected areas, which are key habitats for several cetacean species, including the blue whales, right whales, spotted dolphins, common dolphins, pilot whales, and both coastal and oceanic bottlenose dolphins. Humpback whales are known for their impressive migration patterns and complex social behaviors, and are crucial for the health of marine ecosystems. Our research aims to fill gaps in the current knowledge of South Pacific population and contribute to the conservation of these species. They migrate over 7,000 kilometers each year from Antarctic Peninsula in the south to their breeding grounds in Ecuador. These breeding and mating areas extend from Peru to Nicaragua, also including Costa Rica, Panama, Ecuador, and Colombia, known as Stock G. Our projects collect data in 2 ways. First, we gather opportunistic information through whale-watching tourist vessels. Second, we conduct dedicated expeditions, renting boats exclusively for research purposes. The following video shows one of our dedicated expeditions with different researchers collecting data from the group. During this expedition, we record important data such as whale distribution, individual sizes, group compositions, and behaviors. Additionally, we collect skin and bubble samples, which allow us to study their genetic hormone levels and the presence of potential pollutants. Each humpback whale has scars, marks, nicks, pigmentation, unique tail marking, just like our fingerprints. By studying these patterns, we can learn about their population, where they travel, where they live, and how they connect with different areas. We photograph each whale tail to identify them. This technique is known as photo identification, and each whale is assigned a unique identification number and sometimes even a name. With this information, we create a catalog of the whale tails. Now, our catalog is uploaded to the Happy Whale platform. Between 1996 and 2023, we carry out 2,800 research trips. During these trips, we encounter over 5,700 groups and observed more than 17,000 whales. From these encounters, we successfully identified 4,000 individual whales. By photographing the unique feather on their tail, these whales have recorded more than 6,700 encounters on the Happy Whale platform. Here we can see the migratory movements of whale identified in Ecuador over the past 27 years through the Happy Whale platform. These whales breed in Ecuador and then migrate for their main feeding area in the Antarctic Peninsula. However, they have also been spotted in unexpected places like Brazil, the Sandwich Islands, and Polynesia. This shows their amazing ability to travel long distances and highlights the importance of the international collaboration to protect them. Here, I present to you some whales that were made and born in Ecuador from some Ecuadorian friends. Tres Rayos, Three Lines, our most beloved whale, and the first to bear catalog in Ecuador, with 9 sightings from 1996 to 2015. Alejandro, the most observed whale in Ecuador, 10 times in different years. Old Willie, Viejo Willie, is the most observed whale across various locations in the Stock G, with sightings recorded on 18 different occasions. Carlos Zambrano is the name of the first chief of Machalilla National Park, and also the whale with the longest sighting history in our region, according to our catalog. He is now 38 years old. Typically, humpback whales have specific breeding and feeding grounds, migrating between them with a strong side viability. However, when a whale travels between Ecuador and Polynesia or Brazil, it indicates flexibility in their migration patterns, potential mixing with other populations, changing conservation needs, and adaptability to shifting ocean conditions. Humpback whale conservation successes. In the last 25 years, Ecuador has made great progress in conserving humpback whales, with one of the world's largest whale catalog in Latin America. Our efforts in research, education, and community empowerment have promoted sustainable tourism, and strengthened local economies, building communities around the protection of these species. Sustainable whale watching industry. Our efforts have developed a sustainable whale watching industry that has enhanced the socioeconomic status of many Ecuadorians. Each year, we train captains and guides in responsible whale watching practices, emphasizes ethical tourism that protects marine life while benefiting local economies. We have established regulation for whale observation and conducted training sessions, education stakeholders about the importance of whales and sustainable tourism. Empower coastal communities. Through our initiatives, we are empower coastal communities to understand and take ownership of the whale resource. Each year, we celebrate a whale festival where we baptize and name these whales. The main idea is that they are just like us. They are born and raised in Ecuador, migrate out of necessity, and always return. Puerto Lopez celebrates their arrival with parades, music, and dances. Through our research, we share their histories and raise awareness among local stakeholders about their presences. Environmental education programs. We have launched environmental education programs that offer free books teaching natural science through the study whales, dolphins, turtles, sharks, and manta rays. Since 2020, we have helped over 4,000 children and create 2 educational books that support literacy and provide teaching materials for schools in Puerto Lopez. These programs are crucial for raising awareness about marine conservation among young people. We are pleased to share our website, which features many scientific papers and valuable research in marine conservation, as well as several education books available for download. Protecting whales and communities. This project is based on years of ongoing research that has allowed us to identify whales, raise awareness, and empower the local community. By sharing the history of these whales, we have helped to create tourist destinations like Puerto Lopez and promote laws to protect them. The connection between whales and the local population, supported by scientific research, clearly shows how research can drive productive activities and encourage the conservation of these species. Our research has been essential for preserving humpback whale population and ensuring a sustainable future for the whales and us and the oceans. Thank you so much. This project began with the support of Gregory Kaufman and the Pacific World Foundation. We would like to thank to our volunteers in the last years who have contributed their photos and effort. A hug thank you, team in Ecuador and Maui and the All University help us with our research. And to everyone who has donated photos for our catalog. If you would like to share more photos with us, you can do so through this link in my screen or by send us one email. Thank you so much for your attention. And now I will pass it to our Chief Jens Curry in Hawaii. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christina. Thanks for all your inspirational work in Ecuador and all you do to protect whales and dolphins over there. Great work. And so I'm going to shift focus now and move us over to Hawaii and talk about false killer whales. Before I talk about the project, I do want to acknowledge that this is a joint effort with the Marine Mammal Research Program, and it gets support from a variety of folks. And I'd like to also especially thank Cascadia Research Collective for their help. with false killer whales. And so I'll be talking to you about how the energetic demands of false killer whales and the reduced prey availability may be contributing to high rates of fisheries interactions we observe in the population. Before we get into that, I always like to start each talk by answering the question of what is a false killer whale. Generally, people think of killer whales and they wonder how they're related to false killer whales. And so to do that, we need to look to the scientific name, specifically Pseudorca, and how the species was first described. And that was based on the fossilized skull of an individual false killer whale. And as you can see in this image here on the left, it resembles that very much of a killer whale. So scientists at the time gave it the name Pseudorca, which means false orca, and hence the common name of false killer whales today. In Hawaii, we have three distinct populations or stocks of false killer whales. We have the Northwest Hawaiian Island stock, we have a pelagic stock, and then we have the main Hawaiian Islands insular stock, which you can see outlined in red here, and which will be the focus of our talk, which uses the coastal waters of the main Hawaiian Islands. And this population has been quite well studied, so we do have some information to guide future efforts. And so what do we know today? Well, we have evidence of a slow decline in that population. So it was listed as endangered in 2012, and since then has continued to decline. In 2023, the latest estimate was provided by NOAA Fisheries at around 138 individuals. And over the last 10 years, it has been declining at about 5% per year. We also know that the population interacts a lot with fisheries, and there's a couple of ways we can look at that. First is, of course, direct observation of an individual depredating on a baited hook, as you see in this image here. However, through photo ID, we can look at various parts of the animal's body to look for evidence of previous non-lethal fisheries interactions. An example of that here are these linear striations seen on the rostrum of this individual, indicating that it was caught and struggled against a line of some sort. Sometimes that struggling also causes a complete dorsal fin collapse through cutting of the dorsal fin, as we see in this individual. And then if you're fortunate enough to get a visual observation of the mouth line, you can look for notches along that mouth line, again, indicating the animal was entangled at some point, struggled against a line at some point, however, was able to get free in some manner. And so these are non-lethal interactions with fisheries that we're seeing here. We also know that they compete a lot with fisheries for their primary prey resource. And so in this image or video here, sorry, you can see false killer whales chasing mahi-mahi. That's always a fun encounter because they don't just capture and consume their prey, they actually play with it and fling it through the air. And so that's what you're seeing here. And so if you've been to Hawaii or you live in Hawaii and you do eat fish, you've probably had mahi-mahi before. And that's one of the most common prey items for false killer whales here in Hawaii. If we look further than that and look at the top 5 commercially caught fish species in Hawaii, we see tuna, marlin, swordfish, mahi-mahi. These are all known prey items for false killer whales. And so you not only have false killer whales interacting with fisheries, but you also have them competing for the same prey resource and sometimes not having enough prey. And so these lines of evidence, this reduced population, this competition with fisheries, this competition for prey resource, led us to ask a question of, do false killer whales experience nutritional stress? Are they going through periods of starvation due to lack of food resources? And so to answer this question, we can look to a couple of examples of how nutritional state has been assessed historically. And that is through body condition, and generally bigger is better. And so we'll start with humpback whales, the most common example. You can see individual humpback whales here in the top 2 images. The one on the left is, of course, a very well-fed, a very nutritionally positive state animal or positive body condition animal, compared to the one on the right, where it's very skinny, it's lean, it's potentially nutritionally stressed, and it has a negative body condition. And a lot of the work has been done on these large baleen whales to look at these changes in body condition over time. There hasn't been a lot of work done on the smaller Adonisids. However, we can point to a few examples in the literature. One of those is, of course, something that Pacific Whale Foundation led in 2019, where there was a 21-day stranding event of pygmy killer whales, which are the animals you see down here at the bottom. And so on the left, it's not as obvious, but these individuals are well fed and in a positive body condition when they arrived. The image on the bottom right is after 21 days of not consuming any food. You can begin to see that these animals are getting skinnier, and we were able to document a 2% decrease in body condition per day over that 21-day period. And so our approach to do this, or how do we look at body condition and changes? We use drones. And so we fly a drone equipped with an external altimeter to give us the exact height of that drone. Over the animal, we fly the drone over animals, and then we're able to calibrate our images by determining the exact size of a pixel. And then we can begin to process those images to determine the volume of the animal, and the volume translates into the body condition and ultimately gives us an indication on if that animal is nutritionally stressed or not. And so to get at volume, we measure the animal at 10% increments down the body length, which is the image you see in the top right. And we determine the volume for each of those intervals using the volume formula for a cylinder. We add all those up together, and we have a good estimate of the volume of that animal at that point in time, and that equates to a body condition metric. If we measure that animal over time, we can see if that volume is increasing, decreasing, or staying the same. Ideally, you would want a population like false killer whales to maintain relatively consistent body volumes as they're measured over time. And so to look at this, we were able to complete 111 surveys, or flights, sorry, from 2019 to 2023, over 22 encounters with false killer whales. We were able to measure 74 unique individuals, so right around half the population. And a third of these showed signs of fisheries interaction, again, indicating that high rate of fisheries interactions that we know occurs in this population. And we were also able to get repeat measurements of over half of the 74 individuals. And those repeat measurements are key to look at if false killer whales are experiencing nutritional stress. Again, is that body volume staying consistent over the years that we measure it? And I'll share with you one example here of individual number 10 in our catalog and the body volume measurements we got for that individual over 3 years. We look at the pink line, that's what we would consider the neutral body condition of the animal. We'd expect the animal to be in that state. If it was really around the average we would expect for the population. What we can see from this individual is that was not the case. In 2020 and 2022, it had a negative body condition indicating it was nutritionally stressed. And in 2021, it had a positive body condition indicating that was a good year for false killer whale. That variation is around 12%. And if you look at false killer whales and their body size, that equates to a loss of around 250 pounds for that individual over that 3-year period. And so they're definitely experiencing some form of nutritional stress on the individual level, which then led us to ask the follow-up question of what are the daily behavior patterns of false killer whales and how much energy does this take? And to do that, we look to biologgers, which are these non-invasive suction cup tags that attach to the animal's suction cups. They're equipped with movement sensors and video, and they can be used to monitor and watch daily activity. When we set out to do this work in 2021, these tags were not available for deeper diving dolphins like false killer whales, and so we actually had to work with the company CATS to come up with prototypes, which you see here in the image on the top left, the white CATS tags. And what we finally ended up with a couple of years later, which are these colored tags, and they're ready to go. And so we initiated the work in 2021, and we were equipped with CATS tags and ready to deploy for 82 surveys since then. And we were focused on areas we knew false killer whales concentrated, so offshore areas of Molokai, as well as Lanai. And we had 7 encounters where we attempted to put tags on false killer whales, and 3 of those encounters resulted in successful deployments. 2 of those were as recently as just a few weeks ago. However, it did take 3 years for us to get the first CATS tag on the false killer whale, and this is what you're seeing here. We've been trying for 3 years. Finally, here we get it on. You'll see that I'm pretty excited. A big smile on my face there as we watch that tag go out. High five from a colleague there, Will. And we're all excited to get the first CATS tag out on a false killer whale. Happy to report that kind of got the ball rolling, and we've gotten 3 more out since then and have a total of over 31 hours of observation on false killer whales. In this video, you see what the perspective looks like from that CATS tag here interacting with some spotted dolphins. But more importantly, what is the data showing? We are seeing high sustained swim speeds. So the average swim speed for dolphins is 2 to 3 meters per second. But with false killer whales, we're seeing these high sustained speeds of 4, 5, sometimes even up to 6 meters per second in these bursts. They're also traveling large distances, up to 100 kilometers a day. And so this fast movement and this long distance travel indicate a high energetic cost. And so in summary, the endangered population of false killer whales here in Hawaii is being impacted from bycatch and fishing gear, prey depletion, and various other threats. And we have shown that they do experience large fluctuations in body volume, indicating some form of nutritional stress, and that they also have high energetic costs that may not be consistently met, and what might be driving these large changes in body volume. And so the next work, if you tune in for a future talk, you might hear about the exact daily prey requirements false killer whales need to sustain the 138 individuals left in that population. And so with that, I'd like to thank you for tuning in and supporting Pacific Whale Foundation, and pass it back off to Shannon.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Barry, Christina, and Jens, for those great presentations about some of the exciting and impactful research that PWF is conducting around the Pacific. And thank you so much to all of our online viewers. We hope you've enjoyed learning about some of the ways that PWF is working to conserve these amazing animals. After hearing from our speakers, you might be wondering, how can I learn even more? Head straight to our research program website. There you can access our publications, reports, learn more about specific projects across our regions, read our blog, and more. And you may also wish to follow us on your favorite social media platform at Pacific Whale Foundation. There you'll get the very latest updates on all of our programs. So what kind of financial investment does it take to make the research you've just heard about happen? Here are a few examples ranging from $175,000 in annual fieldwork costs to purchasing a CATS tag, the kind of tags that you just heard Jens talking about, for $10,000, to a cost of $1,000 to conduct educational workshops in our local communities, which you heard about from Christina. All of our research is funded through a combination of donations from conservation-oriented people like you, PWF memberships, grants, and with supporting revenue from Pac Whale Eco Adventure cruises. As you may have heard, revenue from all forms of tourism is down in Maui following the devastating wildfires. So now, more than ever, individuals like you are making a huge difference in our work. 2 of our development team members, Josh and Kagan, are standing by on the webinar and are dropping their emails into the chat right now if you would like to contact them directly to find out more about how you can help. So how can you be involved directly in the research? You can help us by carrying out our mission, by becoming a PWF member, making a donation, cruising with Pac Whale Eco Adventures, both in Maui, but also in Hervey Bay, Australia. You can volunteer by donating your whale fluke and dorsal fin photos to our long-term photo identification catalogs via our portal. Worldwide, you can log your whale and dolphin sightings into our free whale and dolphin tracker app. And if you're in Maui, you can help us collect data during our great whale count each winter. These are just some of the ways that you can be involved in our research, and you can find links to all of these and more via our research website. Thank you for your support in protecting the ocean and its inhabitants. We simply could not do this important work without allies like you. Thank you. Next, we'll be answering questions that participants put into the chat. So our panel of speakers will be standing by. So thank you again so much for attending. And please stay tuned for future PWF Currents of Curiosity webinars coming in 2025. So if you have any questions, please enter them into the chat. Thank you so much. Okay, let's take a look at the chat here. Just a lot of compliments and really nice things from people around the world. So thank you, thank you. Yeah, the team did really amazing, great presentations, great information, and really impactful research. I love that what we do makes a difference. That's one of the best parts about being part of this organization. Okay, here's the question. Have there been any known interactions between false killer whales and pygmy killer whales? How are pygmy killer whales doing in Hawaii? This is from Catherine, and she says she loved the talks. So I think that's for you, Jens.
Yeah, I can speak from my perspective and what I'm aware of in the literature for that. And so, as far as I know, there are no known interactions directly between pygmy killer whales and false killer whales. Generally, pygmy killer whales are offshore deep water species, and so they're not often encountered unless you're heading out into those deeper waters around Hawaii, which some researchers do. Or they're coming in for a stranding event. So unfortunately, when we do see them here in Maui, it is quite often during a stranding event. And we do know from historic stranding data, they do, for whatever reason, prefer to strand right here next to the offices in Mo'olaya Bay. And so, yeah, that's probably the best I have for you on that. I think in general, they're doing great, but in a nutshell, they're largely understudied due to the lack of sightings.
Okay, here's another one. This one comes from Lauren Sims. Any thoughts on orca killer whale behavior with allegedly being aggressive with boats? Is this behavior and these incidents increasing, or is it sensationalized on social media and news outlets? This isn't something that we directly study, but would anyone on the panel like to take a stab at this? Maybe Barry?
Sure. As Shen said, we don't really directly study killer whales, and I had never either. But yeah, I do follow it. And there is the instances of the whales attacking the boats. I mean, it is actually happening, and they have attacked boats and caused some damage. They're really not sure why. There's theories that it was one disgruntled animal who got maybe hit by a boat and took her revenge, and it was a behavior that transferred to the others. I've heard other different theories as well, but I doubt that they're very much fighting back against humans, and this is the end, like the Simpsons predicted years ago. But yeah, I mean, it just probably shows or demonstrates that how little we know about many of these species, but how diverse they are. We know killer whales have all these amazing range of different hunting behaviors and have shown really complex social structures. But it does also show that maybe they can sometimes be mean to humans. I don't know.
Thank you, Barry. This one relates to some important work that Pacific Whale Foundation has done to influence human behavior through a voluntary uptake of boating speeds. So the question comes from Maria Garcia Rojas. What would be a safe speed for recreational boaters traveling along wildlife hotspots? And so, Jens, do you want to talk about our Go Slow Whales Below?
Sure. So we spent about 8 years trying to answer this question for humpback whales in Hawaii. What is that safe travel speed we want to let boat operators know when they're going out there? And so if we want to generalize it to animal hotspots, basically slower is better. If we look at areas where our speed is less impactful, it's going to be around that 10 to 12 knots, up to 15, kind of at the max. And so the general guidelines are slower is better. You want an exact speed, it's going to be around 12 to 15 knots. And the reason we recommend that is because it reduces your likelihood of having a close encounter or contact with an animal. And if you do, in unfortunate circumstances, do have a contact, it limits the impact to the animal. And if you think of a fast-moving boat hitting a stationary object, that's going to be more damaging than a slower moving boat. And so humans can definitely safely coexist with wildlife in wildlife hotspots, but you just want to be cautious and go slow.
Awesome. I have a question for Christina and then one for Barry. Christina, this relates to doble punta. Maria Plaza says she's seen pictures recently of the dragon humpbacks with the jagged dorsal fins in the Pacific. And she asks, is that due to a genetic mutation?
We have different cases in the Pacific. Thank you for sharing our histories in our social networks. Humpbacks can accumulate scars and injuries over their lifetime. And we show two different cases. One is injuries, and other one is the dragon whale that we say. And really, we are not sure the origin of these different humpback dorsal fins, but we think maybe genetic mutations or sometimes external injuries caused by entanglements or collisions with balls or aggressive interaction with themselves. And I don't know if Barry have more ideas.
That was
No, I
great.
think you've covered them there. Yeah, it was funny the week Christina posted that photo of dragon whale in Australia. That exact week we saw one as well, but ours looked more like it was a healed injury, whereas maybe something to do with a vessel collision or a line entanglement. But yeah, I think you've covered it there. It can be both genetics or genetic differences or injuries.
We've seen them here in Hawaii too, so it's kind of similar across the regions, it seems. Okay, Barry, this one comes from Val. And Val is curious, how do you identify humpback dolphins individually? Is it via the tail, like a humpback whale?
No, am I off? Yeah. No, with the humpback dolphins, we use the dorsal fin. So a lot of the dolphin species, the smaller ones particularly, won't fluke up. And even when they do, they don't have really distinctive marks on their tail flukes. But a lot of the species on their dorsal fins, they have little unique patterns on the trailing edge. So that back edge, little notches and nicks on it. And what's interesting with the Australian humpback dolphins, particularly the mature males, they also get this whitish color at the tips of their dorsal fins. It may be heel scars from, maybe aggressive interactions, and they get it on the top of their head. But mostly we identify them with their dorsal fin notches and nicks.
Awesome. Christina, there's a question for you in the chat asking, where can people download your environmental education books, and asking if you could put that link into the chat. And then there's another question.
Thank you.
And there's
all our efforts and papers and education books is in our webpage, Pacific Whale. But you can find one area is publication. You can write publications, Pacific Whale Foundation, and you find the link. In this area, you have different, say, journals, technical reports, conferences, and our is in books. The education is in books. Our scientific reports or papers is in peer-reviewed journal articles. And if you open, if you have time, and if you open book and book charters, exactly as is the last one, 2024, Castro and Mena. Belén Mena is an artist in Ecuador. She printed the book Pachanga many years ago about the butterflies in Ecuador. and she's my co-author of this book, and say El viaje de Elena la ballena jorobada, means the travel of Elena, the humpback whale, Elena humpback whale, and you don't learn. It's free and it's so amazing. With Luna and May, they are part of our team in Ecuador, and they share the books in all schools in Puerto Lopez. And I'm so proud, and thank you so much for all members of Pacific World Foundation for create this kind of tools for our education and for our local schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. And Will Lucero is asking, what's the required information to upload whale or dolphin photos to the Happy Whale platform? And actually, if you send your whale fluke photos to us, they will ultimately get uploaded to the Happy Whale platform, and then we can also use them in our research. So if you contact us, you can upload the photos through our portal, and then we'll do the work of getting it into Happy Whale as well. But basically, it's just information about like date, your location, any other ancillary information that you want to include, like if you happen to know it was a calf with a mother or something like that. Okay, the next question. This goes back again to the dragon whales. Val's asking, has anyone sighted a whale with 2 dorsal fins anywhere? And I think that's a little bit like what we were talking about earlier. Some of them, it's like a single hump, but there's 2 kind of sections of the fin on it. But does anyone want to add something different to that reply? Okay, I'll look for the next questions then. Okay, let's see. Eugene McGovern, so this is going to go to you, Barry, is asking, do these animals form positive relationships with their researchers, and might this somehow skew the observations? This might be more related, honestly, in some ways, to a lot of the smaller dolphin species that are studied. You want to take it from there, Barry?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's probably my uncle. Up way too late. It's late in Ireland. It's too late. I mean, they can form relationships, particularly when dolphins are maybe single dolphins that have separated from their species. In Ireland, we have 2, or we had 2, unfortunately. Fungi, the famous dolphin, passed away a few years ago. We have 2 dolphins, and they actively seek out human interaction and actively avoid other bottlenose dolphins. And that sort of information may skew your results. But in general, the species that we study don't really care too much for us. In fact, Australian humpback dolphins can be quite boat shy, and they will avoid us. However, some species do actively seek us out. So when we see common bottlenose dolphins, these are Tursiops truncatus, these guys will come straight to the boat because they want to bow ride the boat. And things like common dolphins, these will do the same. And that can really skew your data, because some will be very boat friendly, we call them, and so you'll get lots of photos of these guys, but others might be a little bit boat shy and stay away from the boat. And so they'll be boat shy and you'll get less photos of them, and that can actually impact your results. With regards to the humpback whales here in Hervey Bay, it often depends on the age cohort. The younger sub-adult animals, these animals that aren't sexually mature but no longer rely on their mother's milk, they'll often seek out boats and come to your vessel. So you might end up having inflated numbers of those. But in general, most of the species tend not to really give us too much thought, I think. Anyone else have anything to add to that?
Thank you, Barry. And if that is your uncle, thanks to Barry's uncle for tuning in. Autumn's asking, are there any other volunteer opportunities besides what we talked about before? And how does she find out about field work? So Autumn, in general, that would depend on where you're located. And so if you are specifically interested in Hervey Bay, you can reach out to us at Research at Pacific Whale and can be put in contact with Barry, possibly for an internship or something like that, processing data in the office, those sorts of things. Similarly for Ecuador, Christina has volunteers as well. But in general, the opportunities I talked about earlier are the ones that mainly are available. Adam is asking, Jens, this is for you. Does the suction cupped tag have any behavioral effects on the whales and also dolphins that you're researching?
Great question. So sometimes we do notice a short-term response to the tagging attempt. So you have to make contact with the back of the animal to get that tag on. And sometimes you might see a quick dive. We do see them resume normal activity, sometimes within a few seconds, sometimes within a few minutes. And so the deployment behavior is not altered as a result of that. And these tags are staying on from an hour. Our record was 48 hours on a pilot whale, but generally these tags are only staying on for 6 to 8 hours before they come off. And so any sort of long-term behavioral impact is not really existent there. Interestingly, just an anecdote here, pilot whales, when the tags come off, tags come off and then they float to the surface. And they often turn around and approach that tag. And in about, I think it was half the deployments, they actually came up and nudged it with their nose, which was pretty interesting to see. And then they moved on. And so, yeah, general, there's short-term tag response, but behavior response for the encounter is thought to be neutral.
Thank you, Jens. We have just about 1 minute left, and here's the last question that's come in from Maria. Given that swimming with humpback whales is now part of the tourist industry in Australia, and PWF led some research on this, how are the whale swim rules, particularly around mother-calf pairs, enforced? And that's for you, Barry. Do you want me to read it again, or did you catch that?
That's fine. Yeah, I mean, I think this is an issue that's echoed in every place where there's some sort of whale and dolphin tourism, that inevitably the people that enforce the rules are very either underfunded or understaffed. And so it's a very difficult job for them to enforce these rules. In fact, quite often the best way to enforce them is self-regulation within the whale watch industry. And so if one boat is doing something that's wrong, the other boats tend to kind of call them out of it, and it creates this equilibrium, and people generally follow the rules. Of course, every time, there's often people who break the rules and stuff. And in that instance, if you see them, if you record the registration of the boat, you can report it to marine parks here, and they will sometimes take action. Or if you can get a video, is what they're most after. But in general, they'll just remind all the companies at the start of the season about the rules. We have an industry meeting before each whale season, where the companies, or some of the companies, will attend, and we go over the rules again. We generally give a presentation, and we always kind of try to remind everyone of best practice. But yeah, I think it's very difficult to enforce, and the best way is if you can get the internal sort of self-regulation in the industry.
Thank you so much. Very great answer. And thank you to everyone again that joined today. We so appreciate it. We're at the hour mark, so we're going to end the question and answer period now. But thank you again so much for joining us. We really appreciate all of the support. Thank you so much.
Get to bed, Eugene. It's past your bedtime in Ireland. Come on.
I think so. There is more questions. Maybe you cannot see.
There was one more, yeah.
About positive or something. I think so. I read.
Let's see.
Was amazing. Thank you.
Good job, everybody. I think that went well.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. I wanted to allow our last comments to come in, but I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting. If anyone has any follow-up questions or observations, like Shannon put in the chat, please feel free to reach out to research@pacificwhale.org. Thank you so much for joining us today. Aloha.
Thanks, everyone.
Ciao.